This is, after all, a great power competition, not simply of arms, but of will, resolve, and adaptability that leads to winning. We shift our focus from invention to competition itself, the kind that plays out not only in the global arena, but in the quiet corridors of Annapolis, on the fields of play, in the capstones they design, defend, and deliver.
Stepping back from the academy, the whole innovation, I'll call it an ecosystem, is a competition. SWAT-C stands for Squad with Autonomous Teammates.
We very soundly beat Army on the second day of competition. But we saw them with one drone, one time. We were able to basically destroy them in about 5 minutes.
I told you I was going to reflect and thinking about the Army-Navy rivalry and how that relates to the great power competition. The quote that came to mind is, here, I'll read it for you. General Douglas MacArthur, "Upon the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds that upon other fields, on other days, will bear the fruits of victory."
Williams gets a step, low shot to score! Navy does it! The Mids, Patriot League tournament champs!
Competition is about total victory. It's that very mindset of we've got this, we can do this, we will win. That's what we're most interested in developing in all of these young men and women here. In this episode, we turn from the contest itself to its enduring cost. Victory in great power competition is never achieved without sacrifice, measured not only in lives and fortunes, but in moral burden. For those who lead and those who follow, sacrifice is not incidental. It is the crucible in which both ethics and leadership are tested. And in the long shadow of history, it is often the price paid, not the prize won, that defines a nation's character. That's tough, right? In some ways, some people will claim this is the hardest conversation to have. As long as we've been fighting wars, we've been struggling with this idea of how to do it in the right way and for the right reasons. This is an endless debate. You're saying no, right? And it's because of that tradition that we've inherited, that we ask really hard questions here. We ask those hard questions in the core curriculum with the midshipmen that they get in the leadership ethics and law curriculum. And we certainly ask those questions in all the products and services put out here by the Stockdale Center for Ethical Leadership. In so many ways, that's the very heart of why we have a Center for Ethical Leadership. This is really hard stuff at the end of the day. It is just hard. It's one of the hardest tasks in leadership. So on this larger topic of great power competition and potential conflict in the Indo-Pacific region, perhaps over Taiwan.
In his 2025 New Year address, Chinese President Xi Jinping has restated his claim that Taiwan will be unified with China.
两岸同胞一家亲，谁也无法隔断我们的血脉亲情，谁也不能阻挡祖国统一的历史大势。
We know as a matter of intelligence that he's instructed the People's Liberation Army to be ready by 2027 to conduct a successful invasion. Now that does not mean that he's decided to conduct an invasion in 2027 or any other year, but it's a reminder of the seriousness of his focus and his ambition.
The thing that the Stockdale Center for Ethical Leadership can bring to this conversation, or at least should bring to this conversation, is a consideration of the ethical implications of fighting at that level. And we have assembled a unique team in many ways because we have both credentialed academics who bring together some tremendous expertise, and we tap into a broader network of academics drawn from around the world, but they're complemented in very important ways by a team that we've assembled of warriors who have an extensive record of combat experience. We got folks with deep expertise in the application of violence. the Stockdale Center carries a very heavy burden in the sense that it's named for the greatest warrior philosopher in the United States Navy's history, that being James B. Stockdale. And bringing somebody aboard like Michael Robillard is a way in keeping with that legacy, because he is himself a warrior philosopher of the first rate.
And tonight, he makes his MMA debut. Let's hear it for Mike Smarticus Robillard.
I do jiu-jitsu, wrestling, combatives, mixed martial arts. I don't know, I feel like it's just who I am. It's deeper than just like a hobby. I think it has something to do with the space that I'm in here as well, right? It's puzzle solving, people refer to it as physical chess. So there's a lot of elements of strategy and warfare and combat.
Oh, they're gonna stop it.
Collapsed into that space.
And Robillard was absolutely flawless.
I think it informs my capacity to write and to think creatively as well.
The United States Naval Academy class of 2025.
The connection between leadership and ethics, it has to be holistic and it has to be mutually informative. In order to lead, you have to have certain capacities. Likewise, though, to do so ethically, you need to understand what the reasons are that are animating and driving those tactical level decisions.
The nation expects much from you, and we know that you're ready.
And a full officer, a well-rounded officer, should be able to have competencies and an understanding of how those things connect. And I see that as what we are uniquely doing here at the Stockdale Center, is building that bridge between theory and action, action and theory.
Graduates to be commissioned in the United States Marine Corps, rise.
Particularly, I'm so concerned about this because we are now entering into a new paradigm of warfare. The midshipmen and newly emerging officers, this will be the set of prudential and ethical considerations for their generation. If we're going to commit soldiers and troops to risk their lives and risk taking life on behalf of the American demos and the American people, then we owe it to soldiers that they understand the clarity of the mission and the reasons and justifications by which they're carrying out those actions. I think we likewise owe it to the American people and the American citizenry that they have a clear understanding of what the reasons and the animating reasons and justifications for particular military operations.
Tonight, the drumbeat of war. Taiwan says 28 Chinese warplanes, including fighter jets and nuclear-capable bombers, crossed into its airspace. As the tension between Taiwan and China is growing, top military analysts warn that an invasion could cost many American lives.
Clausewitz famously said that the nature of war remains constant, but the character of war is what changes. And it seems like the character of war, as we've been moving into the 21st century, it's been getting more and more complex.
News from the President of the United States that there has been an attack inside Iran.
It was planned and executed across multiple domains and theaters with coordination that reflects our ability to project power globally with speed and precision at the time and place of our nation's choosing.
And that's all the more reason to be having these conversations so that we can get a grip on what are the actual justifications, reasons, priorities in this increasingly complex environment and an increasingly complex character of warfare.
That's a message that I think needs to be sent well beyond the Naval Academy, because the people of the country are providing their sons and daughters. We are the beneficiaries of receiving the sons and daughters of America here to prepare them to be leaders, potentially combat leaders in defense of the nation. And because the stakes are so high in this, especially considering the possibilities we anticipate with great power competition, we take the responsibility of the care and preparation of the sons and daughters of America very seriously. In fact, it's the most serious, you could even say sacred aspect of our jobs, of our responsibility here, is to honor what's provided to us.
Amongst the laws of the Navy that we all memorize plebe year, there is a saying that goes, "On the strength of one length of the cable dependeth the might of the chain." And I proudly proclaim that the chain has never been stronger than it is with today's superb addition.
Probably every young sailor, man or woman, wants to prove themselves, right? We want to be tested. My graduation, I don't remember my speaker, but I remember him saying, "You have earned the right to be the first to fight." Yeah, be careful what you wish for. And at the end of the day, warfighting is still the imposition of will on someone else. That's a person. Warfighting is inherently a personal act. War is ugly, and people die, and that's hard. And it's a huge cost. But it's important that I think you internalize that, whatever you're going to do in the Navy or Marine Corps, because at the end of the day, don't lose sight of your moral obligation to lead people in the warfighting business, which is inherently risky and is inherently dangerous. I think I was on my third combat deployment as a CO, where I was deciding, and I did this even as a XO, as a troop commander, making decisions about whether or not we're going to put folks in harm's way. And so you're making decisions about life and death. And it wasn't until I went to the senior war college where I started learning about just war theory. And when not only is it right to fight, but you have a moral obligation to protect those who can't protect themselves. I tell you that just to say, it's important that as a part of this profession of arms, that leaders think about their moral obligations. Because I think if you do that, when the time comes to make those decisions that have life or death impact, you will do it from a position of, you've had the benefit of thinking about it already, and you'll operate from the moral high ground. But look, war's ugly. And after almost every deployment I've come home from that has been a little ugly, I've told my wife, I said, I'm done. I think I'm done. Careful what you wish for, and then you recoup and you recover and you're back at it because of the importance of the mission and the terrific people. My point is, I think we should all think about that a little bit. Not to be macabre or anything else, but it's just to be very clear-eyed about the challenges and the sacred obligation we have as naval leaders to do everything we can every day to be ready.
35 years have passed since Admiral Keith Davids first took his oath and began his journey in uniform. Now, a new generation stands where he once stood. For the class of 2025, the long preparation has ended. What lies ahead is no longer rehearsal, but history waiting to be written. But for rising first-class midshipman Jack Hightower, there is still time.
It's not a thing where I'm thinking about it every day or it's keeping me up at night, but it's definitely something that on occasion, I'll stop and pause and just be like, hey, I could be going to war soon.
Take responsibility for what comes next and take care of those you are privileged to lead.
I just signed 2 for 7 at the beginning of this year, which is committing myself to 5 years of service after the academy. And that was one of the big questions that I asked myself before I signed that. Am I ready to graduate into combat? Because that's a very realistic possibility to lead sailors and Marines into combat.
All right, so this is going to be your refresher safety brief from last night.
To lead in combat is to shoulder the weight of consequence in its most unforgiving form. Captain Andrew Ledford of Naval Special Warfare and former Explosive Ordnance Disposal Officer Brad Snyder have each borne that burden. Theirs is a knowledge forged in the crucible of war. And now in quieter spaces, They pass that knowledge forward, not as boast, but as duty.
On the strength of one link in the cable, dependeth the might of the chain. Who knows when thou mayest be tested, so live that thou bearest the strain.
So when I was here as a midshipman, I didn't necessarily know immediately what I wanted to service select. One thing that really stood out to me was when I kind of became aware of what the EOD community was and what it was all about. It just seemed so cool. This community that does this incredibly challenging and difficult mission, but in so doing, they have to jump out of airplanes and scuba dive and go to these really austere environments and be in the outdoors, and it just seemed like cool people doing cool stuff. That's why I signed up to join the Navy in the first place. Cool people doing cool stuff. And now it's a solemn responsibility. It's a solemn responsibility to do everything I can to make sure that I'm bringing everyone home. I did not have that in my head when I left here. If we go to war in some sort of meaningful way with China, we will suffer significant losses, as will they. So I think there's a way in which we prepare ourselves. We know that we're going to sustain losses, so you prepare. You prepare as much as you possibly can.
I teach a class, Human Factors in Combat course, preparing them for what is to come on the other side of graduation. One of the aspects of the class that's really important is understanding what you will see in combat. And for one of the experiential events that we do in class, we go to Baltimore Shock Trauma Unit.
It's a busy time here inside the R. Adams Cowley Shock Trauma Center at the University of Maryland.
There was an aspect of this that was really, really important. It was an orchestrated level of chaos, dealing with someone whose life was about to end if they did not do something very, very quickly. Was really, really powerful.
Some nights, does this feel like a war zone?
And some nights it is a war zone.
I really had no idea what to expect. When we got in there, I was super nervous because, I knew that I might see some things that I had never seen before, because everyone reacts differently to blood and that stuff, and I had just never really seen that firsthand, so I wasn't sure if I was gonna throw up or pass out when I saw that. And one of the first things we see is a guy who comes in with he had been shot. He had a bullet wound. I'm hoping to be a Marine Corps ground officer, and there's a very realistic possibility that I could see forms of trauma like that. And so going to Baltimore Shock Trauma definitely helped open my eyes to the kinds of things I might see. One of the assignments that we had to do was to write a letter pretending that we were commissioned officers and we were in combat and someone had died under our command. And for me, that was, just an eye-opening experience. No one wants to think about that, but the reality is you need to think about that. You need to have those conversations with yourself of what you would do, how you would deal with it if that happens. It was hard because what do you say to that? I'm sorry is not going to cut it. What do you say?
People naturally are uncomfortable talking about grief and loss. Why my community in particular is probably more comfortable with it is that we've had to do it quite a bit.
To best understand how we honor service and memorialize sacrifice starts in Memorial Hall. Memorial Hall was designed in 1909 to be the centerpiece of Bancroft Hall, which is the most significant aspect of the Naval Academy. It's where all of the midshipmen are housed. But at the very center of that structure is Memorial Hall. It was refurbished, coincidentally, in the year that I arrived here to work in Bancroft Hall in 2003. And it was reimagined to not just merely be a dance hall or a place to hold social functions, but rather to be the sacred space of the United States Naval Academy. there's an honor of sacrifice, whether it be the 73 graduates of this institution who have gone on to earn the Congressional Medal of Honor, or the stone tablet at the center of that space, which memorializes nearly 1,000 graduates killed in combat, to the murals that are painted along the ceiling and along the walls that capture those moments where graduates and those who have gone before sacrificed and served. When you look around, it's very clear that it's very designed. As one of my mentors, Colonel John Ripley, once said, it's kind of like the Sistine Chapel of the United States Navy. Memorial Hall is the heartbeat of this institution. But it's not the only space here on the yard where service is honored and sacrifice is commemorated.
I have lost very close friends. I keep pictures of them in my office. I see their faces and I remember a little bit about them every day. We have a wall just down the hallway which has the pictures of all of the SEALs that have been killed since 9/11.
In the special operations community, our whole mission is to integrate with anybody, go all over the place, go anywhere that we're needed to bring our skill set and our expertise to the fight, anywhere it's needed. So in so doing, you're a very transient person. So memorials sort of take on this ad hoc or impromptu kind of form. The cabinet, that's personal to Captain Ledford. That cabinet won't be here forever, and it doesn't need to be name sketched in marble for it to have significant meaning. And I think that's a kind of a hallmark of our community. Those memorials sort of pop up, the pictures on the wall. I really like this sort of, memorials have to be personal, and I think I like it when they're organic.
This is the part of the class where it goes from experiential to kind of a personal side. For me in particular, Eric Christensen, my classmate from the Naval Academy, we were in the same company, plebe summer. We went through 4 years at the academy. He rode on the heavyweight crew team. I was on the lightweight crew team. We both ended up being standing up 2 new SEAL teams. So Eric was the first operations officer for SEAL Team 10. I was the first operations officer for SEAL Team 7. And that was during that, his tour with SEAL Team 10 is when Eric was killed on June 28th in 2005.
A grim drama has been unfolding at 10,000 feet in the mountains of Afghanistan. We can't report all the facts yet because American lives are still at stake. This is shaping up as the worst loss suffered by Special Operations Forces since the War on Terror began.
He was leading his task unit to go in and rescue the 4 individuals who were on the ground who had been compromised. As his helo was approaching, it was shot by an RPG and crashed on the mountainside, and everyone was killed inside, including Eric. Eric's the only one buried here. Doug's in Arlington, Megan's at Arlington, Mark's at Arlington, all of them, Rob, Heath, Brian, they're all in Arlington. Eric's the only one buried here on the Naval Academy grounds. Eric is buried there at the cemetery on Hospital Point. And so if you go to his gravesite, you will see the grass, which is manicured pretty well around all the other graves, and right in front of Eric's, it's dirt.
really big traditions at the Naval Academy is anytime you're running past his grave, you do the number of push-ups which corresponds to your class year. So for me, it's 26, because I'm class of 2026. So if you look on the grave, there's no grass growing in front of it. It's all dead because of people's palms being pushed into the ground and killing the grass. For a lot of us, it's just a reminder of what we're going into, you know. Right now, we're college students and, you know, we're at the Naval Academy, but we're gonna graduate and we're gonna be fighting our country's battles. And that comes with the possibility that we might not make it past that. So for me, it's a reminder of that fact. And also just to honor, you know, one of the heroes, one of the many heroes that have come out of this place.
This moment right here is for you, brother. Someone running by saw them doing that. Yeah, I'm gonna do that too. And over time, that becomes a ritual. We are going to live our lives in honor of Eric and all those like him. And we're going to commemorate that in this little way by doing push-ups in front of the grave. And then that happens so much. And that is so resonant within a group of people like here at the Naval Academy that over time, everyone is doing push-ups in front of Eric's grave. So many push-ups are done in front of that grave that the grass can't grow.
So it's interesting, time is probably the biggest commodity here at the Naval Academy. There is way more to do in a day than the students could ever possibly do. And much of that time is regimented. They're told, all right, you have to go to class, you have to do this lecture, you have to go to this sporting event. So much of their day is prescripted. What's nice to see is when they stop, like in front of Eric's grave, that's something that they choose to do. No one tells them, go do push-ups. It's just something that they are making the choice. And it's really nice to see the students want to do these things. It's important in the context of the Great Power Competition to understand how to deal with this loss. Because two things. One, when it does happen, and inevitably it is going to happen, there needs to be a knowledge of how do you respond? How do you deal with this in a way that's compassion and shows humanity and understand that these are human beings that we're talking about, right? It's not just things that we're leading. But then there's also a mission that has to continue. And it's hard. It's really, really hard to do. The second side of this is it's important for leaders to understand that what they are doing has grave, grave consequences. And you have to take every minute possible to prepare yourself, to make sure that you have every possible tool that you can bring to bear on a situation, because the stakes are so high.
Every conversation about leadership, ethics, and character centers on the human dynamic or the human element. And by having experienced warriors that can best articulate how the human element is affected in combat is essential to the education process here.
Brad?
Oh, hey. What's up?
How you doing?
Did you catch it or no?
I did. Yeah.
Cool.
I think there's a fear sometimes with some folks in a particular philosophy of war. They don't want to talk about the losses. They don't want to talk about the losses because they believe that will eat at the morale of the force. But I think the fact of the matter is when you sustain loss in a lot of ways, it's going to erode at the morale of the force. And I think what I'm trying to nod at and suggest that there's a way of accepting the loss in a way that's more productive. Going back to the metaphor of, hey, if you've done everything you can, you lost someone, they made the ultimate sacrifice. That's noble. That's heroic. If you don't, if their lives are lost because of mistakes, because of bad judgment, because of bad leadership, because of lack of preparation, because of they're using the wrong equipment, then that is tragic. And that really will kill the morale of both the force and the people supporting that force. Waging war the right way for the right reasons makes it so that the sacrifices that are made are noble and not tragic.
Just let me know when you guys are formed up and everyone's here.
We're up.
For those who don't know me, my name is Brad Snyder. I'm a 2006 grad. There we go. Come on, come on. Again. How about this? Hooyah 27! There we go. Bring some energy, guys. This is fun. All right. So I'm a 2006 grad. I was an EOD officer out of here. I spent about 7 years in the Navy in the global war on terror. I deployed to Iraq, and then I deployed to Afghanistan in support of SEAL Team 10 while I was in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, after 6 months in Afghanistan, I stepped on an improvised explosive that detonated about 1.5 feet in front of me. I was really lucky to walk away with my life, but unfortunately I lost my vision as a result.
Something out of my control happened. And in combat, the stakes are higher. So the lesson is, I don't want you to have to go through the pain that I've been through unless it's for the right reasons.
You all have rogered up to serve the greatest nation on earth, the first of its kind, a liberal democracy with the values of liberty and justice for all written into our Constitution, which has stood the test of time. We have banded together to fight off tyranny, insurrection, fascism, terrorism, and we now stand ready to face the challenges of great power competition. That Constitution has not stood the test of time because of the paper it's written on. It has stood the test of time because people like you, people like me, are willing to give their life to protect those ideals. What's the fifth law of the Navy? Give it to me loud and proud.
The fifth law of the Navy has always resonated with me from the very first day that I read it in reef points and then had to start shouting it.
The strength of one link in the cable, dependent the mind and shame, who knows thou mayest be tested, so live thou bearest the strain.
But for me, what's always stood out to me was the second half. Who knows when thou mayest be tested, so live that thou bearest the strain.
Who knows when thou mayest be tested, so live that thou bearest the strain.
Not to project myself onto this too far, but I could never have conceived for myself that I would end up blind. You just don't know when that big moment's gonna happen. So how do you prepare for it? You have to live as though that moment might happen at any moment in time. Live that thou bearest the strain.
More than that, closer to the heart, when you guys deploy to the fleet, in your platoon, on your ship, in your aircraft, are the lives of other service members. The choices you make, the decisions you make as an officer bear on their life. My best friend, Tyler Trahan. Tyler deployed to Iraq. He volunteered to help out some Marines doing IED response on the roadways of Ramadi. They thought they rendered the IED safe. They brought the main charge to the rear of their Humvee when it promptly detonated, killing 3 Marines and Tyler simultaneously. Tyler had an OIC, and that OIC has to live with the fact that they let Tyler down. If they had trained him better, if they had equipped him better, if they had set him up for success, he might have come home. And that's on them. And that will be on you if you don't embrace the same standard of performance.
In an instant, my conception of my job dramatically changed. It was no longer cool people doing cool stuff, but rather this solemn responsibility to do everything I can to make sure that I'm bringing everyone home. I did not have that in my head when I left here. That happened to me when I lost Tyler. Part of me shudders to think I did an entire deployment without that level of perspective, without that acceptance of the solemn responsibility. And maybe that's how it has to go. Maybe just when you're young, that just doesn't connect with you. Maybe you have to go through something shocking like that to understand that that's a component of your job. But I do feel like it's very, very important to do what I can and what Captain Ledford can to imbue them with that sense of responsibility now.
On his last day, James Lawrence did not know that he would be called to make the ultimate sacrifice. In heated battle with the British in the War of 1812, he suffered a wound that would take his life. But before he left us, he screamed to his crew, Don't give up the ship! Fight her till she sinks! Same morning, over 100 years later, Eric Christensen woke up that morning not knowing that he would be called to make the ultimate sacrifice. But there it came. The phone rang. His team was stranded on a mountain in Afghanistan. He was in charge of the Quick Reaction Force. He did not hesitate. He jumped into action to save his brothers on his last day. We don't know when we're going to be tested, so we live that they'll bear us the strain. Because the ghosts of our legacy whisper to us from every monument, the memorials, the stones and the bricks whisper to us, beckoning us to ask ourselves, am I worthy? Am I worthy of this legacy? Am I worthy of the sacrifice of those who have come before me?
I don't like the don't forget the sacrifice, because that just kind of feels like names etched in marble. And it's not as meaningful for me like the push-ups. By the way, Pericles, in his famous funeral oration in the height of the Peloponnesian War, there's a moment where the Athenians have taken heavy casualties. And so there's this funeral, this mass funeral of Athenian soldiers who have died in combat with the Spartans in the Peloponnesian War. And there's this turning point, this major moment where Pericles, their most sage and oldest general, gets up and gives an address that is probably what we're looking for. In some, it's a reminder to them about what's so great about the Athenian nation. It's a reminder about the essence of Athenian citizenship and why it is something worth fighting for. But in that speech, he also says, what you leave behind is not the tombstone with words etched on it, but rather what's weaved in the hearts of others. It's in motion. What do you leave behind in the hearts of others? That's what your legacy's measured in. Don't forget the sacrifice is words etched in marble. Push-ups on the gravestone is how do we put this in motion? And the way that this is put in motion is live in a way that gives meaning to those we will lose. And for everyone who's put one of those people into the ground, the imperative to give that loss meaning is so salient, it's so important. We have to make sure that if we're going to lose someone, it has to mean something. It has to be in the service of the protection and the promotion of our essential ideals. And to do anything less than that is a disservice to not only anyone from the current generation who will lose their life in the great power competition, but every person who's done that in every generation's past.